Good morning from Svalbard. Today is our last full day here, and we are doing a full day excursion with better moments. We are going to NY ÅLESUND, which is a research outpost in very northern Svalbard, and it's probably the most northern place we're going to get to.
Yep.
It should be pretty fun, so stick around.
On this episode, we're going to NY ÅLESUND, the northernmost community in the world. It's a very long day trip from Longyearbyen, and we're taking an enclosed rib boat to get there. It's an incredible journey filled with beautiful views, wildlife, glaciers, and plenty of history, and we're excited to take you along for the ride. Let's go! We got picked up at our hotel and brought to the harbor, where we got on an enclosed rib boat, something we've become very familiar with over the last few days in Svalbard, and we settled in for a long, bumpy ride to NY ÅLESUND. NY ÅLESUND is just 1,200 kilometers from the North Pole and only 100 nautical miles from Longyearbyen. That distance may seem short to some of you, but 100 nautical miles translates to about a 4-hour boat ride, depending on the weather. So we got comfy and settled in for a long ride north.
Well, we're in the middle of our trip to NY ÅLESUND. Still have quite a ways to go. Definitely a little bit bumpy. Not as bad as it's been in other trips. The wind's a little bit quieter this time, but we got a long way to go, so we got a lot more of this. We'll see how we fare.
Partway through our journey, we stopped offshore at Pulepinten, just off the eastern coast of Prince Karls Forland, and spotted some walruses napping on shore. After that fun pit stop, we continued our trip north to NY ÅLESUND. NY ÅLESUND is the world's northernmost settlement that's inhabited year-round and open to the public. Its location at the top of the world makes it a prime spot for climate and atmospheric research, and there are research teams from countries all around the world living here. There's a lot of highly sensitive scientific equipment located all around NY ÅLESUND, so there's a 20-kilometer exclusion zone surrounding the area. That means no Wi-Fi, so we put our phones on airplane mode as we approached the town.
Welcome to NY ÅLESUND.
Yeah, the northernmost town in the world.
This is quite a small town. Its permanent year-round population is about 30, and in the summer it balloons to around 100. Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah, this town is mainly centered on entirely Arctic research, and you're only allowed to walk on the streets in town, not off the paths, because if you go off the paths, someone somewhere is going to be mad at you because they are studying something.
Yeah.
We've been walking around town a little bit, and we've seen some of the experiments that are going on. We have no idea what they are, but we've seen the measurement equipment, and so that's really interesting to see.
Yeah, and we know there are at least research buildings for China, South Korea, India, and I would imagine Norway too.
Of course,
probably.
Norway, yes.
I don't know of any other countries, but there probably are a few others.
Yes, there are quite a few countries represented with research areas based here in NY ÅLESUND, and this is the this town is the northernmost lots of things. Northernmost town in the world, northernmost museum in the world, northernmost post office in the world, northernmost gift shop in the world, northernmost cemetery in the world,
northernmost hotel.
Northernmost hotel, yes.
So
very, very cool to be here, but it's also very, very cold.
yeah.
Let's take you on a quick little tour of the town.
The best, most amazing public toilet in the world is this one right here. Unbelievably clean, smells well, even the toilet paper is the best. This is the northernmost museum in the world. It's literally always open.
You might notice our guide is carrying armed protection. Your chances of encountering a polar bear in Svalbard are slim, but they're not zero, and the protection is used to fire warning shots if a polar bear is seen. If you stay in town, this typically isn't needed, but we were venturing outside town limits, so it was required.
Is it Roald Amundsen?
Yeah.
Took a Zeppelin from here to the North Pole. He was the first one to do it.
NY ÅLESUND has a long history, but the town really took off in the early 1900s as a mining town. By the 1920s, it had a population of over 300. One of the more notable parts of its history is that NY ÅLESUND was used multiple times in the early 1920s as a base for reaching the North Pole by air.
Well, in 1926, Roald Amundsen and crew flew from here to the North Pole, or over the North Pole, for the first time in a Zeppelin.
The airship was moored at this pole just outside town, and Roald Amundsen and Francesco Nobile launched their historic flight from this point in 1926.
We are now at the northernmost cemetery in the world where 7 people are buried, and you're not actually allowed to be buried here in Svalbard anymore. And it's very muddy, mush, but we are surrounded by all this beauty. Did you think you'd go hiking in the Arctic permafrost on this trip?
Not at all.
What do you think?
I did not see this coming.
But it was cool to see the things we saw.
Yeah, it's cool. Very cool. This building behind me is the Chinese Research Center in NY ÅLESUND. It's pretty obvious based on the structures up front.
Of the countries with research bases here, only about 5 have a year-round presence.
I am the northernmost walking person in the world.
Very funny. Behind me is a bust of Roald Amundsen, a very famous Norwegian who went to both the South Pole and the North Pole, and he was the first person in history to do that. He crossed the South Pole first, and then in 1926 he took a Zeppelin that he had tied up here in NY ÅLESUND. He took it from NY ÅLESUND and crossed the North Pole with his crew. That is a pretty insane thing to do, considering that it was 1926. His house was right over there. And according to history, his house actually used to be the town bar.
The town is so small that everyone eats their breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the same building, the community center behind me.
We are now experiencing a sudden snowstorm in the northernmost town in the world. This is the northernmost snowstorm that people are experiencing right now. Probably not. NY ÅLESUND has the northernmost post office in the world. The building behind us used to be the post office, and it is adorable. And now the post office is just housed in the cafe.
This is the oldest house in NY ÅLESUND, potentially built as early as 1909 for coal miners.
Walking around town, you have to stay on designated paths because everywhere you look, there's research equipment and experiments going on.
What are you up to?
Writing postcards from the northernmost town in the world. Now they're in the mail. Don't forget to take off your shoes when you go in the store.
The store has everything you could need, lots of souvenirs, postcards, stamps, snacks, and even yarn.
We got our stuff.
Now time to go to the bathroom. You just had the northernmost toilet break.
Yeah,
How'd it go?
it was good. The sink water was very hot, almost burned my hands. But it was nice.
This used to be the jail right by the sea. It is no longer the jail. They don't have jail here. Now we are heading back to our ship. And no, it's not the big one.
For another 5-hour drive back to Longyearbyen.
Was it worth it?
I'd say it was worth it, but it wasn't fun, that's for sure to get here.
That's true.
From the time we landed at NY ÅLESUND to the time we had to be back at the boat, we had about 1.5 hours to explore. Because we went to see the historic marker for Roald Amundsen's trip to the North Pole, we had to stay with a guide because it was outside of town. It was really cool to see, but it did take away some of our time exploring, so there were a couple things we didn't get to do, like go to the museum. Overall, we have no regrets and had a lot of fun exploring NY ÅLESUND. We hopped back on the boat and our guide had one more surprise for us. We ventured a little further north and celebrated our journey with glacier views and a glass of champagne.
We made it to 79 degrees north.
Let's go. Very wavy still.
It's been a pretty epic day, and now we're heading back to Longyearbyen. Well, we just wrapped up our super long trip that ended up being a 12-hour day.
Oh.
It was very long.
Yeah, the boat trip was rough, just in its total length, but also just the bumpiness on the way there. The trip back was a lot smoother, but still very long.
Yeah, I think we spent 5 hours getting there, which makes for a very long boat trip.
Yeah, not many stops. We only stopped like once or twice for walruses.
Yeah, we stopped once to enjoy the view of walruses, which was really cool. And then we got back at it full force, heading to NY ÅLESUND. And it was a really cool town to see. Town is maybe a stretch because it only has 30 people. It's a really cool community to visit. I love that it's research focused, which is so awesome. And it's such a unique place to see.
Yeah, it was a cool experience.
Absolutely.
Just takes a while to get there.
It does. I don't regret it at all. After our stop in the town, we got back on the boat and we got to cross the 79th parallel, and we celebrated with some champagne and a view of a glacier, which was such a fun experience.
Yeah, very pretty.
And then, of course, we booked it back down. We ended up having a delicious chili meal for lunch. It was a nice change from the soup that we've been having for the last few days.
Very filling, though.
Very filling, very good. Hearty, made by Fruene in town, which we hope to visit before we leave Svalbard. I'd say overall, it was a really good experience.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do this, you really have to be confident that you can handle seasickness.
Right.
If you can't, you need to take Dramamine and bring sea bands for your wrist to really reduce the effects of motion sickness.
Don't try to fight through it. It's not worth it.
It is absolutely not worth it. And the biggest tip we can provide is if you are feeling nauseous, get up and go outside to the back of the boat where you'll get some fresh air and you can see the horizon. It makes a huge difference.
And it's less bumpy to back there.
It is. The further back in the boat you go, the less bumpy it is, which is nice.
Yeah.
Overall, I highly recommend it.
Yep,
But
sure.
it's not for everyone.
Right.
We are super hungry, so we're going to head to dinner now, and we will see you there.
Well, we're back at Barentz Pub tonight. We got the special, which is svenska köttbullar, or Swedish meatballs. It's got brown gravy, mashed potatoes, and lingonberries on top. Looks really good. Wow, that's very good. You get the savoriness from the meat and the potatoes and gravy, a little bit of sweetness from tartness from the lingonberries. Perfect combination.
It may not look like much, but I can't wait to dig in. That is so good. It's like ridiculous. I grew up eating Swedish meatballs every year. For Christmas, it's tradition. My family does a Swedish smorgasbord every year. These are very good. I don't know if they're quite up to my mom's standards, but wow, seriously, if you get a chance to try authentic Swedish meatballs, you should do it. Dinner was fantastic. The food was incredible, and it was reasonably priced. So many restaurants here in Svalbard and Norway in general are very expensive, but the meal we just had came in at around $27, including drinks.
Yep.
Well, non-alcoholic drinks.
And that meatball dish could have been $27 just on its own.
At a different restaurant. Yeah. This place was delicious. The atmosphere was also fantastic. We highly recommend coming here. And if you do come, we would suggest coming, either making a reservation or coming after 8 p.m. Some of the tables start opening up. It's been a busy day and we're pretty pooped, so we're gonna call it a night and we'll see you in the next one. This is our walk back to the hotel. Nice little path right next to a stream with a view of the coal mine.
I think we're only about an hour and a half in or so. So we still got quite a ways.
Do you think we're that far?
I don't know. I think so. But we got a long. We're going.
We've been walking around town a little bit, and we've seen a couple of fun.
So if you guys want, I highly advise you, before you go to back to the boat, use the toilets because they are superb. They really are. This is actually the reason why we come to NY ÅLESUND. We can actually go back to the boat. You guys can go. It can be 4 a.m. in a Sunday. You can go in. For some reason, there's a dentist chair inside from like the 50s.
Soft ground right now.
It's disgusting.
Jeremy doesn't like it.
I am the northernmost walking person in the world.
Very fun.
Except for the people visiting the North Pole on icebreaker.
Ah, yes. After our celebration at the glacier, we got back on the road. Road is wrong because it's water. I don't want to drip. Well, dinner was fantastic.
Yep.
Are you gonna say any more?
I don't know.